You're listening to VGS on Talk Radio, AM 640.
Well, do we have that bit, Thomas?
No, we do not.
Okay, great. This is VGS again, talking about games. We talked about the PlayStation experience. Now it's time to dive into Dead Rising 4. Very quickly, of course, Zach, Liam, and Thomas are here with me, Andy. Have you guys played the Dead Rising games at all?
Some of the old ones, yes.
Yeah?
I've dabbled here and there.
Dabbled.
I played the first one extensively.
So this latest one, as we'll hear in the review coming up from old Richie Gels, kind of does away with a lot of the traditional mechanics, the timer, a lot of the punishing survivor stuff. It's a sandbox game, essentially. But we did figure out that the ending of the game is not actually the ending intended by the creators. There's going to be a Frank Rising or something of that tune DLC that will continue the story and give an alternate kind of ending, because it's very final. We don't want to spoil it. Liam said he would get very upset. So, yeah, what do we all think about the idea that a DLC for a game, let's use The Witcher 3 as an example, a big narrative story. Let's say Geralt dies at the end of The Witcher 3, just for an instance. It doesn't happen. Imagine if the next DLC was, but wait, he comes out of the ashes and needs to kill the person that killed him. Zach, you're shaking your head.
No, it removes any kind of sense of stake from the previous story, and it kind of flies in the face of what good DLCs do, which is added another additional dimension on top of or underneath an existing narrative. So it kind of just makes it pointless, the story pointless in the first game.
It becomes like Dragon Ball Z. People die and then they come back to life, and it never really actually matters.
Nothing
Nothing
matters.
To pay for them to come back to life.
Yeah.
It's nihilistic.
Maybe, what if it wasn't a paid DLC and it was kind of like a quirky alternative universe kind of thing? Because this is a very quirky game.
Like a Far Cry type thing.
Kind
where
of.
it's
That's what I was
just
thinking.
like,
a Blood Dragon DLC sort of thing.
Well, yeah,
if it was like that, then maybe. But first of all,
you should not undermine the main narrative of your own game. Like I don't know why you would do that.
So if what you're alluding to is that they do not end the story at the end of Dead Rising 4, and instead you get the end of the story in this DLC, make Dead Rising 5.
Really?
Right? Like, don't make a DLC, make another game, or put the ending of the game in Dead Rising 4.
This reminds me of a lot.
That idea doesn't have enough legs to survive as its own game, but it should just be like, I don't know, like, it could be its own DLC, but it shouldn't be like the definitive good ending that you get. You should have still your good and your bad endings that the series has always offered. That
seems to be the chief complaint, that the series traditionally had a multitude of endings based on your different rankings, and now this one is kind of just the worst bad ending. But
no matter how hard you work.
Yeah, no matter. Richard, 80 hours, he's crying. Now, imagine this, though. Do you think that this game kind of gets a pass because it doesn't have the narrative weight of a Witcher 3 or a Mass Effect? That it is so quirky and weird and alternative. Do you think that maybe some of these things don't apply?
I don't really think that's an excuse.
Just fundamentally, it doesn't.
If you're going to have a story in a game, whether it's like, Faulkner or like the most throwaway story ever.
Love
like
those Faulkner video games.
If you're going to have a story in a game, have
a
story in a game, have a beginning and an end, unless you plan on sequels. Don't do that.
Yeah, it's
no excuse. No excuse, even if it's weird and wacky. And
no, but that's great. But that doesn't mean that you again undermine your narrative. Like even with the Far Cry games, there's a sardonic point to it all. They're making a critique, right? Even if you're going to do weird, then do weird. Nothing that we've heard from the DLC is that it's really going to apply or add anything that's really interesting to the dynamic.
Red Dead Redemption did a very
Zombie,
it's almost
great. It's literally what this is.
Exactly, except it's not like. Oh, actually, wow, it is almost exactly the same as what this is.
It's literally what we're alluding to right now.
Wow,
Liam Brand
that was great.
Out.
That was awesome, though.
It was awesome, but they knew this was wacky and different. It went from a Western game to a zombie Marston coming out of the grave needing to kill the people that killed him.
And it wasn't an alternate ending, too. It was just like an alternate universe where it's just like this happens and it's not even on the same timeline. But it's not like, oh, you have to deal with John dying, but if you want like the real ending that we want, you got to buy this DLC. Like, that's ridiculous.
All right, I think we do need to learn a little bit more about the game. Coming up right now, we got good old Richie Gels tell you all about Dead Rising 4. Watch out for the end, though.
Dead Rising 4 is the latest in the zombie series by Capcom. This time, starring fan favorite and original main character Frank West. He's back, everybody.
I've covered wars, you know.
This time around, Frank has a new bunch of toys to play with. Taking a cue from Dead Rising 3, you're able to make dozens of combo weapons from various parts lying around, filling your inventory with a veritable arsenal of handmade zombie-killing tools, like a sledgehammer covered in grenades or a sword made completely out of ice. Speaking of, new is the addition of the exosuit, modular power armor that lasts for about 2 real-time minutes, but lets you devastate the enemies around you. There's 5 different upgrades for these armors scattered across the map, and you really feel invincible when you put one of these bad boys on. Overall, the whole experience has been streamlined. For example, survivors now go to safe houses by themselves instead of needing to be escorted by Frank himself.
So that means they don't just die.
You can make any combo weapon out in the field by having one of the pieces in your inventory and standing over the other and holding down the B button. And finally, starting a side mission doesn't feel like you're wasting any of your precious time. And speaking of time, this game does away with that ticking clock of doom that the previous games featured. No longer do you feel like you only have a few days or even a week's time to complete as many objectives as possible to get that best ending.
Fantastic!
So you can mess around as much as you possibly want, finding all the blueprints or collectibles and getting as many achievements as you possibly can. I did it! Now, you can do objectives in any order with no penalty, so the game feels truly open world and lends everything it has to help you feel like you can do anything in the town of Willamette. It was because of this that felt like I was enjoying this a lot more than I did Dead Rising 3. And as I approached a door that warned me that I wouldn't be able to return from the endgame, I wondered just how everything was going to be tied up. But then, the ending happens. You go through a boss fight, a huge 7 or 8 minute slog through giant zombie horde fighting. Without spoilers, after the final cutscene, I sat there dumbfounded and wanting, honestly, a lot more. The problem is, this is what other Dead Rising games would consider to be the bad ending. And at the time, I couldn't just Google it to find out how to get the good ending. But eventually, it just boiled down to DLC. The Frank Rising DLC, which is of course a part of the Season's Pass, will give you 24 extra in-game hours to escape, find answers, and finally get what would be that good ending. But it's just wrong. Other Capcom games like Asura's Wrath did this, and it's a cheap practice. It isn't fair to the really huge fans of this series who supported it from day one, who were looking forward to this game for months. But I mean, what do I know? I only invested 80 hours into a game from a series I love. But besides the ending issues, I really did enjoy Dead Rising 4, and I'd be happy to give it a solid 8 out of 10. I'm Richard, and that's how I feel about Dead Rising 4. VGS will be back right after this.